Hey guys, Tyler here, and this is the Garage Warrior podcast and videocast, and I am here today with Kiefer from Carbnite. How's it going today, Kiefer?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. Hey, well, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to get on the call. We're going to talk a lot about a bunch of different things today. Before we do, Kiefer, for people who might not know who you are, you're the author of Carbnite, you're the author of Carb Backloading, and you're
Right.
also a physicist. And so you come with the physicist's approach to nutrition, fat loss, muscle building, and so on and so forth. So can you give us kind of like the 50,000-mile view as to how you got into this?
Um, just real quick, always trying to figure that kind of stuff out for myself,
Sure.
being a fat kid. And then I was always buying medical libraries and the stuff in the magazines was never very satisfying. So I just started going to the medical libraries. I started seeing references and articles and thought I'd go look them up. And so over the last 20 years, it's just been reading those articles, learning the stuff I didn't understand that they were talking about, and just educating myself over the last 20 years to really try to understand how the human body works.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. Is just going to the back of a book and then looking at the references and reading those things. It's so powerful how much information you can get in addition to the book just by doing that, right?
Yeah, and it's what's amazing now is, when I started this, there was no PubMed. There was no online. You had to go to the library and you had to sit there, find the articles you wanted, make photocopies of all these things, and then bring them home to read. Now you get on there, half of them, you can just download the PDF. It's
Right
so,
away, yeah.
you know,
That's amazing. So let me ask you a question before we dig into kind of the meat and potatoes of this conversation. What do you think's going wrong with the fitness industry? Because we get a lot of these armchair theoretician gurus who use their bro science on everybody. I mean, are they just not reading enough? Are they not really practicing what's reality? What do you think?
I think it's a mix of there's already some preconceived notions and everybody's kind of got their fan that they follow. And so what they look for are articles or abstracts that just support that narrow point of
Sure.
view. And to be honest, I think things like Facebook have really brought the fitness industry to this wild west that we see now. It's always been kind of crazy, but there wasn't as much availability for people to just throw up some random abstract and say, "Oh, well, the point of this abstract said that this is just totally stupid," and they don't realize the context was maybe obese people.
Sure.
And they haven't done the research. Like obese people, literally, even at the cellular level, they're completely different from somebody that's an athlete.
Sure.
So, I saw somebody wrote this article about, well, eat breakfast to stay thin, and it was for athletes, but all the studies that they referenced were extremely obese people.
There's no correlation at all, right?
Right, there's really not at all. So this is just it's turned it into this just mishmash of whoever can yell loudest instead of really trying to break it down and understand things and get the experience with people. I know literally there's some there's a 17-year-old out there now who's going around posing himself as this fitness expert. He's 17 years old, skinny, scrawny little kid. It's like never worked with anybody, hasn't taken the time to understand anything, but he's very, very vocal and very, very belligerent. And that resonates on Facebook. And I just don't get it. I'd rather have good information than somebody just, going around saying everything's stupid.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that whole atmosphere that's going on right now that has really, I think, kind of ruined the industry.
Well, but my theory is I think the cream always rises to the top, and so that we have these people who are just talking and talking and talking, and they're good talkers, and they are going to get a lot of traffic, but eventually people are just going to realize it's not going to work, you know.
It's very confusing. Who do you if you're out there in the general public and you don't have the time to look at this stuff, like who do you believe?
Sure.
And you want to believe the person that you resonate the most with.
Sure.
And they could have the worst information out there, but you
Yeah.
just like them. And which I totally understand, but at the same time, it makes it difficult for people to make educated decisions because there's too many voices with too many points of view and too many random references.
Yeah.
It's not hard to find a single reference to support your point, no matter what it is. I mean, it's gotten to that point.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's so much out there. It's so insane. So when you got started and you started digging into this, what was the first thing that you started looking into to kind of were you looking into muscle building, losing body fat? What were you looking into?
I was mostly, when I very first started down this, it was all about losing body fat and trying to keep my muscle mass.
Sure,
I started off as a bodybuilder. That's every bodybuilder's ultimate goal. How big can I get? How lean can I stay? Because,
sure,
I could get big, but I was kind of smooth when I did, or more than smooth. And it was a lot of work to whittle that off. And
right,
I wanted something that was easier, more effective.
right. And so is that when you started practicing things like the Carbnite and things like that you came up with?
Correct. Yeah. The very first thing I tried that actually worked okay was the anabolic diet
Okay.
by Dr. D. Pasquale.
Mm-hmm.
Great diet. It just didn't quite work. So that led me on to the low carb path. I thought, well, maybe the carbs were screwing me up on the weekend. So I just went the low carb path and started studying that. And that's when I started to understand insulin's role in the body, which is just really to make every tissue grow. So
Right.
you can kind of control that. Um, and then, I had a carb blowout in the middle of one of my dieting efforts, which was horrible. Literally, all I ate was chicken, cheese, and hot sauce for like, I think it was like 6 weeks before I broke down.
Oh man.
And then I realized there was more to what Dr. D. Pasquale was saying, that maybe he was just missing some information. And it turned out he was. He was way ahead of his time
Sure.
to where the information needed to really hone it in and refine it just wasn't even available.
Right. Right. And so that's where you came up with Carbnite. So for people who don't know what Carbnite is, Kiefer is kind of the guy who put eating your carbs at night as a better option than eating your carbs in the morning on the map. I used to be one of the guys who was like, oh, you got to eat your carbs in the morning because you're going to burn them out through the blah 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 blah. But like, I didn't like that. I like having white rice with my dinner or potatoes and stuff with my dinner. I don't like that for breakfast. I'm fine with bacon and eggs or protein. You know what I mean? So can you explain this to people? Why is this more beneficial for them to eat carbs at nighttime?
There's so it all in on the grand scheme of things, it really comes down to how your hormones are tuned throughout the day. So, in the morning, you're waking up in a fat burning mode. Cortisol levels are up, growth hormone levels spike, catecholamine levels might be up. So your body's actually in this great situation where there's no insulin to get you to store excess calories in fat tissue, but you've got all these hormones helping you to get it out of your body fat stores. And that's really the key point that everybody misses. Sure, you could eat carbs and still burn fat when you exercise, but that fat most likely came from your meal
Right.
or from possibly liver reserves. Mobilizing body fat is really the key. So by skipping breakfast, we can mobilize a lot more body fat than normal. And then as the day goes on, you get some hormonal shifts, you get some sensitivity shifts, and then by spiking insulin at night, you can then get some powerful thermogenic effects. You can get some growth and repair effects. You can reset some hormones for growth in the evening and further fat mobilization while you're sleeping.
So what you're just saying is that people by eating carbs at nighttime rather than in the morning time is they're going to allow their body to burn more fat in the early part of the day, and they're going to make their body more anabolic and more metabolic as they sleep at night. Is that right?
That's correct.
I
The
hope I hope you
the
guys listen
one,
to that again. Like, I mean, that's
yeah,
really powerful information right there.
right. The one rephrasing being that they'll actually mobilize more body fat. That's really the key. It's easy to burn fat. Like us sitting here, even though we're doing nothing, lounging, and
Right.
I'm in a chair, it looks like maybe you're on a couch.
Right.
We're burning fat. It just happens. It happens all the time. But depending on how we ate this morning, we may not be mobilizing any body fat.
Okay.
And there's very, very big difference. And that distinction gets lost all the time, especially when you see studies presented. You see all these, oh, well, if you do this, then you burn more fat when you exercise. It's like, well, where did that fat come from? And it turns out 9 times out of 10, the fat you burn during exercise came from meals, or which even could have been a meal that you ate 2 days ago.
Sure.
It turns out your body has a secondary storage mechanism in your intestinal tract to store fat that you ate, and it will release it over the next 2 days until it's cleared out. So you could literally have an absolutely low carb meal, no fat whatsoever, and you still get this triglyceride spike, fatty acid spike after you eat. It's because your intestines have sensed food coming in and they release fatty acids. They didn't come from your body fat.
Right.
So what we needed is an environment that allows fat cells to just give that stuff up.
That's crazy. I didn't know that your body stored fat in your intestines like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's actually, I just came across that research. It's like a year old
Wow.
because there's always that question. I'm always talking about, well, how do you stage carbohydrates when you do eat them at night? Should you go really low fat, save your fat till later? But the inconsistency was it doesn't matter. Every time you eat carbs, you get this triglyceride spike in whether it's a fatty meal or not fatty meal. And they recently discovered why, because that was one of those things I just couldn't answer. It was like, well, it should theoretically, this should be the best way, but the research didn't really support that. And now I understand why. So it almost does. If you've had fat in the last 2 days, you're going to release fatty acids every time you eat.
That's super interesting.
Yeah,
So basically, you're saying between burning fat and mobilizing fat is burning fat is it could come from your food, it could come from your body, any source. There's no distinction there. But with
correct.
mobilizing fat, you're specifically using the fat from your body as energy. Is that correct?
Correct.
Cool. So we want to mobilize fat, guys. Quit burning fat. Let's start
Right.
mobilizing some fat.
Hey, don't worry about the burning part. It's gonna happen. If you're alive and you're breathing, you're gonna burn fat. It's just unavoidable.
So, does this mean that people can just douse down on carbs every single night, Kiefer? Can you explain a little bit more about your protocol?